go to the presentation. Tonight's presentation is entitled Aging in Place. Stay home, stay safe. Our speaker tonight is Alfred Poor. He may be familiar to many of you here. I must confess that we have lost count of how many times he's spoken at the New York Amateur Computer Club meetings over the years. You also may know him from his many appearances on the Personal Computer Show, the radio show, I should say, with Joe King and Hank Key, where he was also a co-host for more than 8 years. Some of you may remember him from more than 20 years of writing for PC Magazine, or for his more than 12 books that he has written or co-authored. He is a technology expert and professional speaker. These days, he's the editor and publisher of Health Tech Insider, a website and newsletter that delivers curated news and original analysis of wearable and mobile devices for health and medical applications. You can also hear his Health Tech Minutes each week on Dave Graveline's popular Into Tomorrow syndicated radio show. Tonight, he's going to focus on how health technology can help seniors, their families, and their caregivers cope with aging in place issues. So please join me in welcoming Alfred Poor.
And before we hand it over to Alfred, can I just interrupt and say a couple of things of procedure? We're going to take questions at the end, but feel free to go into the chat section in Zoom, and if you have any question in the middle of the presentation, you can write it in the chat there. Maybe somebody will address it, or otherwise Alfred will look at it at the end of the presentation. And then at that point, at the end of the presentation, you can also speak up verbally. While Alfred is presenting, please make sure to keep your microphone muted and only open your mic if you really have to say something. And at that point, now we'll hand it over to Alfred. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Asa. So, sort of a quick, easy question here. Before I get started, I just want you all to think about how many of you have a elderly relative or a friend who is living independently in their own home. And the second question is, how many of you are concerned about your own independent living as you get older? Now, I know a bunch of you already. I suspect that the majority of the people on this meeting are going to answer yes to both of those questions. And I mean, I know that's certainly the case for me. So what I want to talk about tonight, if I can get my slides to advance, there we go. Stay home, stay safe, how technology can help seniors continue to live independently but safely on their own. And this all stems from the fact that 90% of people age 50 or older, they want to continue to live independently in their own home. And so the place where we start is this. I feel that we must do more to address the needs of the elderly who want to live independently in their own homes, because this will save lives. It will result in a better quality of life for the elderly and their caregivers, and it will save enormous amounts of government and private money. So what are some of the issues that come to bear in this whole topic? And obviously the first one is the fact that we have this aging population, and the game is changing. It's changed a lot more from when our parents were our age, or even our grandparents, and especially since our great-grandparents. People are living longer, and they're often with chronic diseases that in generations past they might not have survived. For example, diabetes. There are 34.2 million adults in the US with diabetes. That's 10% of the population. Furthermore, another 24 million people age 65 and older are pre-diabetic. So that 24 million on top of the 34 million. Diabetes is a huge expense in terms of healthcare. And if it's not treated, as I'm sure many of you are aware, if it's not managed properly, it can lead to severe complications and possibly even death. So it's a big deal. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which includes asthma and others. We have 15.7 million people in the country who suffer from that. And again, a large portion of them are in the elderly. And of course, there's Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. In 2020, we had 6.2 million people dealing with dementia. That's 1 out of every 9 people 65 or older. And I'm sure for many of you, that comes as no surprise. The thing is that that's expected to grow. By 2050, they're estimating 13 million patients with Alzheimer's.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. No, the interesting thing is that forecast number has come down in the last few years. So we are making some progress there. The thing is, it's more than just chronic disease and age-related disease. Another issue is caregivers. We have a severe crisis in caregiving. Right now, the number of caregivers available for each senior who are aged 80 or older, currently we've got about 7 caregivers available for every 1 senior 80 or older. By 2030, they expect that to drop to 4 to 1. And by 2030 and 2050, they expect it to be 3 to 1. So we're going to have fewer people available to take care of our aging population. Currently, we have 2.5 million paid caregivers in the country. However, there's an additional 53 million unpaid. These are family members, relatives, neighbors, volunteers. So the vast majority of people taking care of our elderly aren't getting paid for it. And a huge number of those are elderly themselves. So they're probably going to age out of the ability to be much help. By 2030, some estimates say that we're going to be short at least 150,000 caregivers. Caregivers are interested in using technology to make their tasks more efficient, but only 7%, according to a survey by AARP back in 2016, only 7% were using it. And they were typically using technology like spreadsheets to manage medications or schedule doctor's office visits and things like that. The big obstacles to adapting technology were the perceived costs and awareness. They don't always know how much this is going to cost. A lot of times they just assume it's going to be expensive. And in many cases, they're not even aware of what's available. And that's part of why I put this talk together, is to help expand the horizon for people so that they understand some of the range of choices of things that are available and what's coming over the horizon, that can help make taking care of the elderly and help support them in aging in place issues. It should be pointed out that same survey, the most wanted help was in the following 4 areas. Caregivers wanted to be alerted when their senior was in need of urgent care. They're concerned about home safety. They're concerned about monitoring their medications and just being able to check in to make sure that everything's okay. And these are all areas where technology is already helping and can do a whole lot more. And then other areas of concern is, as we get older, we encounter physical impairments, and those physical impairments can threaten our ability to care for ourselves in our homes. And so obviously mobility is one, just simply being able to get around. But other kinds of physical impairments can be a problem: vision impairment, hearing loss, and the big one we were talking about before the meeting started, the risk of falling. falling is the leading cause of injury for seniors, but it's also the leading cause of death for seniors due to injury. So there are other medical causes for death, but in terms of injury, dying from an injury, most of the time that is caused by a fall. So if we could just eliminate the fall risk or reduce it for seniors, we could improve lives, save a lot of money. And then the other kind of impairment that we need to talk about is cognitive impairment. We get slower mentally as well as physically. And in some cases, it turns into Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, which can then be a threat to our ability to take care of ourselves and to live safely at home. So for me, the important thing to think about impairments is that we can just expect to have our abilities decline over time. And if they're going to decline, theoretically, it makes sense that there is some point at which you're no longer safe, that it becomes a threat, and that you need to compensate for that impairment somehow, whether somebody looking after you, whether it's a managed care facility, whether it's some technology service. The problem is that we are terrible at self-reporting on our impairments and as they decline. You ask somebody, and I'm sure you're going to hear it all the time. How are you? Oh, I'm okay. Moving a little slower, having a little trouble hearing, but I'm okay. It's not that bad. And the problem with a lot of these impairments is decline comes in very small increments. So even family members, somebody living with you, adjusts to the changes and they don't really see them. So while you feel like you're in this curve that just is gently sloping down, you may actually be in a decline where at some point you've crossed that curve, that line, and below that line is the point where you need some sort of intervention to help keep you safe, so that you can continue living at home. But how do you know when you've crossed that line? And it's one of the really difficult things. I have a mother who has turned 100 this year. She lives by herself in a single family home with no immediate neighbors up in Rhode Island, 6 hours away from here. And, it's very difficult to keep track of how she's doing and what she can and can't do. And so I understand at a very personal level how difficult this problem is. But along with the general decline, those slow incremental declines in ability, there's also the rapid decline. And that's where things can happen all of a sudden. So for mobility, you might have arthritis, you might have some joint problem, and that can create a problem slowly over time. But if you have a physical fall, that can create injuries that cause a severe drop in your ability all of a sudden. Same thing cognitively. There are all kinds of ways that you might decline over time, but you might have a stroke, which could have a significant and immediate impact on your cognitive ability. One of the important things about these sudden changes is that it's important to have a fast response, because for many of these kinds of things, stroke, heart attack, falls, the sooner you can get treatment, the sooner you can get intervention, the better the outcome. And so this is not just a theory. The University of Missouri had an experimental residential community as part of the campus for seniors. And they did a study, and they were just looking at the early detection of illness, whether or not they could have a smart home that could determine if one of the residents was sick. And what they discovered was that early detection of illness alone could extend the average time that they could live independently by 2 years. So and that's just illness. You know, you start adding the cognitive, the other kinds of physical health kinds of issues. There's a lot that can be done to help extend your ability to live independently. One of the most important ones, and again, people were talking about this before we got started, is it helps to have an emergency alert system of some sort. And we've all seen, I don't know if they're still running them, but we've all seen the help I've fallen and I can't get up ads, and they have, you know, the person wearing a pendant that they can push the button and summon help. These things are called PERS devices, PERS. That stands for Personal Emergency Response System. And there are a lot of different ones out there, a lot of choices that you can make, and some that you can use in ways that weren't originally even intended, which is kind of interesting. But I think in order to understand what's available and to be able to make some rational, informed decision about what kind of solution to look for me, you want to look at it in terms of what's it cost and how effective is it. And so this cost-effective chart sort of points at some of the issues and will help you understand what the technology is good for and what maybe it's not so good for. And the first one that I'll start off with is that Help I've Fallen button, that pendant, and I have stuck it all the way down in the lower left corner. The simple systems don't cost very much, but they're really not much use. And here's why I say that. First of all, as somebody mentioned in the discussion beforehand, a lot of seniors resist wearing them. The problem with it is it's kind of like when you were in kindergarten and your mother would clip a note, so they'd pin a note to your sweater for the teacher. It kind of feels like that. And I think a lot of seniors don't like it. A lot of times seniors don't remember to put it on, or it's a hassle to wear it. And they leave it on the bedside table. If it's on the bedside table when you fall in the kitchen, it's not going to do you any good. How bad is the situation? Well, there have been a number of studies about seniors using these PERS systems, personal emergency systems. And what they discovered is the seniors tend not to use them. Now, just take a guess. Think to yourself, for seniors who have access to one of these pendants or, one of the chains that you can pull on the wall, or, any kind of panic button like that, for those seniors who actually are in a real situation where they need assistance, they've fallen, they're whatever, it's a genuine, urgent situation where they need help. What percentage of the people who have these systems do you think press the button? Just think about that. And I'll tell you, the average of the studies that I've seen says that about 7%, less than 1 in 10, will push the button. Now, let me be fair. There's a lot of good reasons for this. And this is aside from not wanting to wear it and leaving it behind and all that. There's a lot of good reasons why seniors won't push the button. The first one is, it's not that bad. If I just lie here for an hour or two, I'll get my strength back and I'll be able to take care of myself again. Another one is, I did something stupid. I shouldn't have gotten up on that stool. I shouldn't have whatever. And they're embarrassed, and they don't want to be embarrassed. And so they don't want to tell anybody. Another one that's very strong is, I don't want my children to know, because if my children know, they may want to take me out of my home and put me into a managed care setting of some sort. They may think that I can't take care of myself. And so these are all really strong reasons that the button does not get pushed, even though it's a situation where it should be pushed. And I'll talk a little bit later on about how to get around that. But first, I want to talk about some other common systems that are available in the PERS field. Some of them are smartphone apps. And so If you have a smartphone, you've always got it with you, and it can have an emergency button that you push, and that's great. Except that in my experience, a large portion of the elderly aren't able to maintain a smartphone. You can't rely on them to keep it charged. You can't rely on them to keep all the software updated as necessary. You can't count on them to reboot it when it's having troubles or after the system software gets updated. If any of the systems you use for helping to monitor seniors in the home relies on a smartphone, for me, that's one of the weakest links in the whole chain. And I think it's to be avoided. There are alternatives. There are some not smartphones. This is a flip phone. It's happens to be one called the Jitterbug. And one of the advantages of it is that it's got a screen that's not graphics. It's large characters, so it's easy to read. And down at the bottom, you'll see that there's a bright red button, and that's your call for help button. So this is easier to maintain. It's less, has many fewer functions than a smartphone does, and so it's easier for many seniors to deal with. And then you can go whole hog, and systems with a base unit, two-way voice. Some have speech recognition, so you just call out and it will trigger a response, and you can talk to it. They can have pendants, they can have wristwatches that will hold the button. A lot of different choices. Again, they tend to be more expensive. And the problem is, if you're relying on the senior to push the button, it's probably not going to work. Okay, the majority of the time, they're not going to push the button. Now, let me talk a little bit about the cost of these things. There are a bunch of different kinds of features, and your choice for those features affect the cost. For example, when you push the button, who gets notified? Now, for some of the very inexpensive ones, it sends a text message to the people on your emergency list, your caregivers, your family members, whoever it is you want to be notified. More expensive ones will send an automated phone call to that list. The more expensive service than that will contact the local emergency services. The most expensive ones have humans staffing, trained technicians staffing a call center. When you push the button, they'll take the call. If it's a two-way speech thing, they'll talk to you and try to determine what the problem is and determine the right level of response. But obviously, you add all these up, the more features in there, the more it's going to cost monthly. And these can get quite expensive. Another factor is, how do they communicate that information to the call center or to the outside world? Some of them still rely on a simple landline. You need a wired telephone in the home to make them work. So if you've still got that in your home, then you're fine. If not, you need to pick a system that doesn't rely on that. Another approach is to use Wi-Fi. And for me, Wi-Fi is also a weak link because, again, in my experience, it still takes a certain amount of fussing to keep a Wi-Fi system going. They're more reliable now than they were some time ago, but it's still an issue. And finally, another way that they do it is they actually have a cell phone contract, a cell phone account for the device. So whether it's the portable thing you're carrying or whether it's the base station, it could communicate to the cell system as data and just send data back and forth, or it could have a regular cell voice account and you'll be paying as if it were a cell phone. And so that can be one of the most expensive approaches. I also want to point out that none of those communication systems are totally infallible. If your power goes out, you could have a problem. If the local cell tower is down, if your internet goes out, you could lose this communication. So none of these are perfect. But if you rather than rely on the person to push the button, however, in my opinion, what you really want is something that does passive monitoring of people in the home. And there are a number of products already out that use radar waves, radio frequency waves, and invisibly can monitor who's in the room. They're amazingly capable. They can distinguish between different individuals in the room. They can track their motion, their movement. They can tell if they're standing or sitting or lying down. They can even tell if they've gone from sitting or standing to lying down suddenly, and are able to detect whether or not the person's fallen. And once they're on the ground, they can detect whether or not they're moving or not. So this doesn't require anybody to push a button. It can just say, okay, yep, we have a person who's fallen and they need help, and they send out an alert. Most of these devices don't do it yet, but they have the capability to not only monitor the motion and the body position, but they also have the ability to detect the person's breathing rate. So they can tell if you're breathing on the floor, and they can detect the heart rate. There are systems like this that are being used in hospitals already to monitor patients in the room without having to have contact with them. So it's a non-contact way of taking heart rate, breathing rate, and motion detection. So this is, to me, some sort of passive detection and trigger is an important thing to add. I'll note that a number of the pendants and wrist devices and so forth, some of the more advanced ones and more expensive ones, do include a passive fall detection. But so for me, that's the minimum. You need to have passive fall detection as a feature. Another area that's coming into play are the smart home digital assistants, like the Amazon Echo and the other devices. There are skills already where a senior can call out and call for help. And if they're within earshot of the personal assistant, they'll be able to get help that way. They can make phone calls that way. There's a number of things that can be done that can help a senior in the event of an emergency. Again, higher in the cost, maybe a little less effective, but some people have tried to get around the hesitancy of some people to wear a fall detection, motion detection device, a purse device. And some have actually built them into jewelry. So fashion bracelets, necklaces can contain these devices. My understanding is they haven't gotten a lot of traction in the market, but it's an interesting approach and a way to help get a device that people are actually going to use. The best of the best, in my opinion, are some of the smart watches that are out there. There's one called the Kanego Watch from a company called Unali. And this is very interesting because it doesn't work just in the home. It does have a built-in cell communications feature, so you can use it outside the home. It also has a GPS locator built into it. So if you're have a problem, it knows where you are. And so when it sends out a notification, it can tell where you're located. Because it's a phone, you have two-way spoken conversation. So you can call for help and speak to a real person. You can have a panic button that you call, and it will connect you to a technician, but you also could use it to call somebody on your emergency contact list. And the other cool thing about it is, again, for outside the home, if you're not sure where you are, the GPS will be able to give you directions to find your way home. So this is sort of the top of the pyramid as far as I'm concerned of the way things are going now. But there's more coming soon. We've got a lot of the pieces. One of the pieces that I'm most intrigued by are smart fabrics. These are fabrics that can have sensors built in, communications devices, even energy harvesting so that they can gather energy from your body heat or your motion, or even in some cases, the sweat from your body to power the electronics. And I've always said that wearables will really take off when they disappear into our lives. So anything where you have to charge it or, fuss with it, change the batteries, plug it in at night, or update the software, all those things are going to make it harder for people to use, and more likely they're just going to stop using them and put them away. If you get up in the morning, put on a shirt and go about your daily activities, and the shirt will do all the reporting for you, track your heartbeat and your breathing and your motion, do passive fall detection and automatic notification. People will use that because it's easy. We're not quite there yet, but I expect to see a lot more products along these lines coming soon. So in addition to the problems of emergency response, there are other areas about living independently for seniors that we need to be aware of. And for me, I've broken them down into 5 categories of social, financial, safety, health, and medical. So let's look at each one and just briefly and talk about some of the solutions that are available out there. One of them, under social, this is extremely important because one of the things that happens for a lot of the elderly is that they start to feel isolated. They get lonely, and they may have limited mobility. They may not be able to drive anymore. Transportation may be a challenge. Their family, loved ones may live at a distance. They may not see their friends as much as they did in the past, can't do some of the activities that they used to do. And in fact, loneliness is an important precursor to other, I hate to call them real, but the other more significant health issues. Loneliness can lead to depression and inactivity, which can lead to other mental health problems, and it can lead to physical health issues as well. So there are a number of solutions out there that make it easier for seniors to stay in touch with family, with friends, video calls, and a lot of these systems are made easy so that they don't have to fuss with a mouse and loading Zoom and finding the right codes and all that stuff. It's all pre-programmed for them, makes it easy for them to make calls and to receive calls from family and friends. Another interesting thing is there are social robots that are made. And so, I mean, obviously a lot of people of all ages, but especially seniors, can gain a lot of satisfaction with having a pet. But there may come a time where having a pet is more of a challenge than a comfort. But they are now making robots that respond to your stimulation that you provide them, and they can engage with their owner. And a lot of people find that this is a very satisfying and engaging activity that, again, helps with the loneliness. And while I'm on social, I'm also going to throw in hearing, because undiagnosed or untreated hearing loss is a huge problem worldwide, but especially in this country. And again, like loneliness, hearing loss is known to be a precursor to other health problems. I'm sure you've all experienced this, where somebody who's become hard of hearing, they get tired of saying, sorry, what did you say? Could you repeat that? And the people around them are tired of them asking to repeat all the time. And what eventually happens is they just shut down. They stop listening, they stop responding, they just let the world pass them by. And again, this can lead to the depression, the isolation, and so forth. The interesting thing about hearing loss is that in the past, and still, the expensive, good hearing aids cost like $4,000, which is a lot of money for a lot of people, especially the elderly if they're on a fixed income. But what's happening now is there are really excellent, they call them hearing devices, hearables, but they perform the functions of hearing aids that you would get from a professional audiologist. And you can now buy these direct over the counter, direct from the company, and they can cost as little as $400 a pair. 1/10 as much as what the expensive hearing aids do. And these, especially for people with mild to moderate hearing loss, can be transformative and help them hear, and again, help them re-engage with the world. So that's important. Oh, one of the things I forgot to mention about loneliness, I'm not sure if you know about this or not, but in the United K, they have a cabinet minister who has the position of Minister of Loneliness. So in the UK, they recognize how important loneliness is as a health factor, and actually have the whole department focused on that. Another area of concern for seniors, obviously, is financial. And this is just, I find this so scary. The FBI, in their 2020 Elder Fraud Report, reported that $1 billion per year is reported to them by seniors about fraud. $1 billion. Now brace yourself. According to the National Council on Aging, however, the total losses due to fraud and with seniors is more than $36 billion a year. $36 billion. That's a huge loss for our seniors. And in many cases, individuals just get wiped out financially completely. So they're the outside bad actors who will scam and try to talk people out of their money, and they're very successful at it. But sadly, another large area where this exposure comes from is from inside. A lot of seniors allow their family members, adult children or whatever, to manage their finances for them. And for whatever reason, the ones helping out with the finances end up dipping into the till and can end up wiping out the assets of their family member. So it's not just Nigerian princes who are part of this problem. There are services out there that you can use to set up a protection system for their assets. They don't control them. They have limited access to them, but they can pay all the bills. They can process the deposits. They can keep the books balanced and make sure that they know where the money's coming in and going out. And these are very affordable services and can give a lot of peace of mind to both to the senior, but also their family members, to know that they're protected from this kind of loss. The next area that I want to talk about is security. And used to be that home security was a very expensive and complicated proposition. Today, it's much simpler. And you can often, just by mail, get a system that you can install yourself, or some family member can install fairly easily. One of the interesting things is that the safety alarm, smart home people haven't entirely caught on to the needs of the aging in place population, but they already have all the information you need to provide home monitoring and alerts within the home. They tend to look outside the home for threats coming in, but they've got the sensors and everything they need to already in place to monitor what's going on inside the home. So I expect in the years to come, we're going to see the alarm systems become much more adept at handling other problems that aging in place can bring up. The next area that I want to mention is health. And there's a lot that technology can do to help people with their health. One is just taking medications. The fact is that the elderly are terrible at complying with their medication instructions, missed doses, forgotten doses, whatever. And the problem is that by not taking the medication as prescribed, that can lead to other health complications and much bigger problems, hospitalizations, and all kinds of expensive treatment that could be avoided if they just took their pills. There are smart pill boxes that you can get, and a variety of different approaches there. There are also pill robots that you can get, that somebody can preload them with all your medications, and then will dispense them at the right time, so that you have the right ones when you need it. It can also track that you've taken the pills, and can also report to a caregiver or a family member, again, that you're complying with the prescriptions as designed. But more than that, there's connected health devices that can help monitor the health of a senior aging in place. For example, there are smart digital scales that can communicate to the cloud and send that information where it can be shared with a family member or a physician or whatever you want. And this can be very helpful to track, again, some of those gradual declines, those gradual incremental changes. You can see whether someone is losing weight or gaining weight when they, in ways it's not expected, and can trigger an intervention to see if there's something that needs to be treated. Similarly, you can get connected devices for taking blood pressure, which can be very helpful to track a person's health and keep them healthy. And there are also devices that can monitor your heart rate and blood pressure. And there's no smartwatch that reliably does blood pressure yet. They're working on it. But you can get heart rate and motion and a number of other useful biometrics from it. There are patches, smart patches that you can wear for up to weeks at a time that can do an EKG, a measure of your heart rate, not just your rate, but also the waveforms of the electrical activity of your heart. They can also do motion and body temperature and a number of other useful things. And then in the middle there, I've got a pair of earbuds. And this is interesting because, first of all, you can actually measure your pulse from your ear canal. So by wearing a pair of earbuds that are equipped with this technology, it can measure your pulse rate. More than that, those same earbuds can measure your blood pressure accurately. And that's without having to calibrate the device with a regular blood pressure machine or something like that. So there's a number of ways that we can get useful health information that's connected and shared with the people who need to know it, and do it in ways that are not difficult or require a lot of effort on your part. And then finally, there's medical. And the big story about medical, obviously, is telehealth. 2 years ago, when I gave this talk, I would be talking about how telehealth would be coming. It's getting started. Thanks to the pandemic, telehealth is now the norm. It not only means that you can see a doctor and have a consultation without having to expose yourself to possible infection by going to the doctor's office, and all the exposures that would be entailed in making that trip. But it also means that you're more likely to get the medical service, because for a lot of seniors, especially with limited mobility, if they can't drive anymore, they have to depend on somebody else to get them to the appointment and take them there and bring them back. And maybe that person has to take a day off from work and lose a day's pay, or it's just inconvenient for them. All that goes away with telehealth. You call up the doctor, you see each other on the screen, we talk about things, and with these remote devices, they can get the data that they need. So telehealth is huge now as after the pandemic, and it's going to continue to be a huge factor in healthcare going forward. And so this is going to be a big boon for seniors who are looking to age in place. Now, there's other stuff coming, not here yet, but some fascinating technologies that are on the way and that we'll see eventually. One of my favorites is we already have tons of data around us that can inform choices and decisions about your health and tracking diseases and all kinds of things. One of the reason I have this picture here is that studies have shown that it's possible to map the cognitive decline of an individual just in how they enter the PIN on the ATM machine. So the speed, the accuracy, there's a bunch of different factors that go into it, but it correlates directly with cognitive ability. So that's just one example of how the data is already there. It's just a question of collecting it and using it. Another one is pills. There are smart pills, pills that can record that you took the pill. Again, no need to guess. This would actually do a digital tracking of whether or not you took the medication. There are other kinds of smart pills that are going to be very useful, some that can collect samples from inside the digestive tract that can be helpful for diagnosis. Also, they have camera pills that you can swallow, not as an alternative to a colonoscopy, but as an easier route to inspect your digestive tract. And for some people could eventually mean that they will eliminate the need for a normal colonoscopy, which I don't know of anybody who's thrilled to get one. So that could be great. Personalized medicine. We are learning so much more about individualized bodies and body chemistry and genetics and the DNA of us as individuals and the effect that has on different kinds of medications and other kinds of treatment. That's already being used routinely in some ways. So expect to see personalized medicine continue to make leaps and bounds in the years to come. And another one that I just love is the whole concept of exoskeletons, of assistance for body movement. Some of these are passive, where they use rubber bands and other devices to absorb the energy that you use and then release it back to help you. And in this case, the system stores the energy when you sit down, and then when you stand up, it helps you stand up. So this could help you, be more mobile, especially for getting in and out of chairs, which is a challenge for a lot of seniors. There's goes all the way up to powered exoskeletons, where the joints are powered with a motor. There are devices like this that can actually help people who are completely paralyzed, help them walk, that they can walk more or less normally using one of these sort of robotic exoskeletons around them. And to come back to the whole problem with caregivers, robots may be there to help us. I mean, one of the biggest problems for caregivers is helping their patients who have limited mobility, helping them in and out of bed, helping them onto the chair. There's a bunch of motions where lifting and moving them safely can be a challenge. We may well see robotics in the home that will be able to help with these kinds of activities, these tasks, which could make a huge difference for the seniors, for the caregivers. But again, you can see how this might make it possible for somebody to continue to live in their home independently longer than if they had, rather than be bedridden in some managed care facility. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what I've got here. If you want to follow up with any of this with me, please feel free to reach out to me at alfred@alfredpoor.com. That's alfred@alfredpoor.com. And from there, I will go ahead and take any questions that you might have.
Alfred, if you want to look at the chat line, there are a bunch of questions.
All right. Brendan was going to scan them for me.
He responded to them
Okay.
on the chat line, but there's some.
Okay. All right. Well, I will scroll
I just
back
pasted
to.
a summary right now that we had 2 questions that didn't get answered. 2 questions that are on the table.
Okay. Go ahead.
The first one, Steve was asking, how can I find the Unali Kanego Watch? And he wasn't sure how to spell it. I found that. It's unaliwear.com.
Correct.
And Sorna Kumar was asking what company produces the earbuds that can check blood pressure, and what about the EKG device and the heart monitoring patch?
Okay. All right. So the earbuds, the earbuds rely on a technology from a company called Valencell.
Can you spell that or show
I'm
it?
putting it in the chat.
Okay, great.
Actually, let me go check it online first to make sure I have it right. Yeah. So they're called Valencell, and I put this in here. They don't actually make any products. They make the technology, so they're like Intel. They're the Intel inside. But I will try to come up with a Jabra is one of their client companies, and I don't know if they have the blood pressure ones yet or not, but they do have. Jabra does have earbuds that do the heart rate monitoring. And then about the smart patches, my best advice there is to go to Health Tech Insider, our website, and search. Oh, wait a second. Let me try that again. That link will work much better if I could put some slashes in. If you go there and search for smart patch, you'll find a lot of different ones. A lot of them are at this point are still intended for clinical use. So they're going to be available through doctors and hospitals. But here is a link that has the search.
Alfred,
Yes, sir.
there's several patch systems out there for checking blood sugar level, which is
No, nobody has a non-invasive blood glucose system that works yet. That they do have wearable continuous glucose meters, but those involve a needle that penetrates under the skin. So, the Libre, Dexcom is one of the companies, is one, and I guess might be Philips is the other.
yeah, Dexcom is the one I'm familiar with.
Yep,
Because
yep.
my nephew, who is a type I think it's a
Type 1.
type 1 or type 2, I forget which one's
Chi-
which.
Childhood is type 1. You're born with type 1, you earn type 2.
I think he's a type 2 already.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I wasn't sure which one was which.
Right,
But,
right, yes. Type 1 is often called childhood diabetes.
And he
And-
has the one with the needle under the skin.
Okay,
The-
yes,
the
so-
patch that he replaces has replaced every
2 weeks probably.
2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's
And-
probably 2 weeks at this point. But yeah, the holy grail there, and we're just beginning to get to that point, is they have insulin pumps that you can also strap on and that will have a needle under your skin. So what we need is the data from the glucose meter on your arm. We need to get that data directly to the glucose, the insulin injector,
Yeah, that's the next
and
step.
close the loop, and so that one, drives the other. FDA has been slow on this, which I think is the right way to be.
I don't want to make
but-
them,
right.
because there's it's crucial that there be no extreme errors.
Right. You don't want to mess this one up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that's definitely something that's come along very quickly, and it's especially important for the type 1 diabetics, because kids, little kids aren't aware of what's going on necessarily, and they don't always hear.
recognize the symptoms.
But the
like an
big
older
problem is
person can.
they can crash at night while they're asleep
Mm.
and have no way of knowing. And so these continuous monitoring devices can send an alert to a smartphone or other device to wake the parents up and say,
Go check your child.
Go check the child, and it's saved lives. It's a wonderful thing.
Also, there are I know, because my sister works in technology transfer. There are researchers at University of Pennsylvania working on interface in the EE department that are working on the interfaces between the insulin pumps and the continuous monitoring.
Yep.
So I know people in that department who are working on that stuff.
Yeah, they're working hard on it. Ace has got a question about the exoskeletons. Are they available on the consumer market yet? The answer is a qualified yes. It all depends on how much you're willing to pay. They're not cheap. They're in the mid 4 figures at this point. So, but on the other hand, $4,000, $5,000, that's what you pay for a pair of hearing aids. So, maybe not that expensive, but
Do you know of any company names that you throw out?
Again, best thing to do is go to Health Tech Insider and search for
Well,
exoskeleton.
I might recommend one place to look. Of all the places, Boston Scientific.
Yeah, Boston Scientific is not involved in this yet.
But they are starting to be involved.
Are they?
Because,
Okay.
But they already have robotic skeletons that emulate animals. So the next step
Right. Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
them would be to upgrade that to a human to bipedal.
Sure. Well,
That's
yes and no.
Boston Dynamics.
There's a lot of there are a lot of complications. Asa, I just put a link in for Wandercraft.
Alfred,
Okay.
That's one of the most advanced ones.
I'm Stuart, Alfred.
All right, thanks.
Alfred, my wife has fallen a number of times. One day she broke a femur, another day she bruised her ribs. She's been in and out of hospitals and nursing homes, so I had to learn a lot of stuff the hard way. Now, I think one of the best things I ever did, I put a lockbox outside of my house
Mhm.
with a key to the front door. And I put a big sign on the front door, in an emergency, call this number, which is my number.
Yep.
One day, she fell down. I was in Manhattan, so she was able to call me. I called my neighbor upstairs. I gave him the code to the lockbox. He came down, picked her up off the floor, put her in the bed.
Good.
I think a lockbox.
Well, I will go you one better. Rather than a lockbox, I recommend a digital deadbolt. And the advantage of this is that you can have a lot of different codes that will open it. And your application, your app will monitor when the door is opened, what code opened it, when it closed again. So it gives you a whole timeline. The big advantage there is, say you have a tradesperson, a plumber needs to come in and fix something. You can give them their own code and make it available. So it's, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on this day. And then after that, it doesn't work again. So you don't have to worry about somebody getting a key and then having to change all the locks because you don't know if they made a duplicate. And
I think for the police or fire, it's simpler for them to just open a lockbox, open the door. Don't forget time. Time can be the essence,
Yeah, but they still need to know what the code is on the lockbox.
No, they open. They call my number. I give them the code. They open the lockbox. The
Right.
key is, yeah.
So they call you. You give them a code, and they punch it in, and it opens.
No,
right?
It's mechanical.
I know,
it's
but-
mechanical.
But what I'm advocating is not mechanical. I'm advocating one of the smart locks. The same process holds. You give a code, they open it immediately. And the thing is, you can then erase that code so nobody else can use it again.
Now, another thing I would recommend is the Echo Show.
Mhm.
My wife one day, she didn't answer the phone. I didn't know what was going on. So I have 3 of them in my house. Have
Okay.
one facing the bed. I could access it from my smartphone.
Sure.
I called Exo Show. I turned it on, and I could see, that she was safe, but she just fell asleep.
Right. Yep. And again, that comes back to the smart assistance and the communications. There's a lot of different products that are making that available, that kind of functionality available. Steve,
You can get the Echo Show.
I have a question.
No monthly on it.
I have-
Amazon's got if you want to buy an older model, $45 with no monthly, and you have
Got it. Yep.
Just
Steve.
need Wi-Fi in your house.
Yep. Steve was asking about artificial kidneys.
Yeah, I have a question on they're working on it, and I know they have put it in a pig, but they haven't put it in a human yet. I wanted to know, when it's going to be available, how good it's going to be, and stuff like that.
I don't know. I know that there are a number of different people who are taking a number of different approaches to it. Obviously, huge demand for it. But it's, I wouldn't be able to give you an informed guess as to what it might happen. I imagine we're probably 5 to 10 years out.
Yeah. I know you
Sorry.
don't need rejection drugs with it.
Exactly. Oh yeah, they're huge advantages to this. And one of the things is they've been doing great things with implants and being able to encase them in non-bioactive materials. So your body doesn't reject it. They don't corrode. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah. It keeps your bioimmune system from
Exactly.
being confused.
So pardon me for, hopefully it's Nathan, because I'm not sure how, I think I would butcher Sornakumar or whatever it is. So Nathan's asking about exoskeletons that can reduce load. Boy, go to Health Tech Insider and look at some of the articles we've done. There's really interesting stuff going on. Pretty sure it's BMW. Workers on the assembly line have been using this for years. It's actually a brace that you put on your legs. So you walk around normally, but then when you need to squat and work on something, you can lock the brace and then just sit on it. And it takes all the load off your feet and your legs while you're working. A lot of companies, especially the big box stores, have been doing a lot of really good research on passive devices that as you bend down to lift something, you sort of fight rubber bands or other kinds of devices to get down there. But then once you get down, it forces you to use proper lifting posture, and then you can lift and
A heck of a lot more.
well,
Safely.
you can lift about the same, but they do find that you get
Less
at least a
damage.
5% savings in energy consumption. And then beyond that, we do have aliens. Sigourney Weaver's, big exoskeleton mover thing. Those things exist. There's a fascinating product that you can wear so that you can use heavy tools up over your head, and it just locks them all in place. So you can use your hand to control it, but this powered device does all the lifting and holding for you.
What was it? I don't remember. One of the who was the? Do you remember who was the designer of Asimo? The Asimo
robot.
robots.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Is it Toyota? It's one of the car
Could
companies.
well be Toyota.
Honda. No, it's Honda.
Oh, it's Honda, right? Honda. Yep.
Well, they have it. I know for a fact that they have working prototypes of human exoskeleton, usable exoskeletons that can lift, maybe allow you to safely lift up to five times your weight.
Yep, exactly. And
those are starting to be used in warehouses.
They are. And again,
lift pallets instead of
the difference there is that there's a return on investment. They're not cheap, but it can be
exactly.
It can be justified because of the productivity gains for somebody living on their own and with a fixed income at home. It's probably not a good match.
But just to provide a worker with the ability to do 5 times what he would normally be able to do in a day is a big deal for companies.
Yep.
I would think.
But
it would also prevent wear and tear on people's joints.
Yep.
Which is the whole point of it.
But they're also being used in medical treatment. One of the stories we covered was children with cerebral palsy have a characteristic crouch walking style, and they have an exoskeleton that helps them learn to walk properly.
Straighten up.
Yep.
I think Ron has a question.
Okay, sorry.
Alfred, has you done any research on nursing homes?
Recent nursing homes, and which regard?
In nursing homes, how to select a nursing home?
Oh, I don't have any information on how to choose one. I'm sure there's lots of good advice out there, but I don't have any sage advice to offer you on that one.
Well, where is this good advice?
I'd start with AARP. I mean, I know that they're a paid cheerleader for the industry, but they also do have some good information. Medicare
only pays 100 days in a nursing home.
Yep.
Medicare.
Yep. Asa, you have a question?
Yeah, Alfred, as far as access to a residence, you recommend the digital bolt type locks over the key?
The problem with a mechanical key is that somebody can take an impression of it and make a copy. Or if you have a spare key and you give it to somebody, because it's a plumber and they need to get in and out, you don't know where that key goes. But if you're the plumber and I tell you, okay, just enter 1, 2, 3, 4 and you'll get in. Well, for while you're there, 1, 2, 3, 4 works. But when you're done, I erase that code and it doesn't work for you anymore.
Alfred, if you have an electronic garage opener, you could also put a temporary pin to let somebody in the garage opener.
Same idea.
It's interesting because that's a classic use of it, of what we in the computer industry we call an OTP, a one-time password.
Yep, exactly.
One time use, never to be used again unless you choose to.
Exactly. I think that's much more secure than a physical key.
Any other questions, people?
Hey, Alfred, I have a question for you. Are
Sure.
there any studies on how, are there any benefits like people who are living alone having a pet?
Yeah, I don't know of any studies, but absolutely. Pets, again, if you're in a condition where caring for the pet is not, doesn't put you at further risk for whatever reason, it makes a lot of sense. But that's where a lot of these social robots and other things come in, where, maybe you're in a situation where having a live pet, maybe you're not home enough to take care of a live pet, or there could be all kinds of reasons. But these social robots actually do a remarkable job of providing that interaction and positive feedback, and a lot of the benefits that you would get from a pet.
I was thinking,
As a former pet owner myself, I have to keep explaining to my grandchildren why we don't have pets and why we don't want any. So
I would think if pets work with PTSD, they should work with seniors who are isolated.
Yeah.
Alfred,
yes, sir.
I will attest to the fact that I have an example of exactly that working.
Mhm.
My sister's husband's mother lives alone in a managed care facility that allows pets,
Mhm.
and she has a dachshund. All she
Yep.
has to do, she knows how to put the food down, and my brother-in-law goes over and takes the dog to the vet every so often to make
Yep.
sure it has its yearly rabies shot and things
Yep.
that necessary. And she absolutely adores
Yep.
the dog. She takes it everywhere. It's
Yep.
amazing.
No, that absolutely.
I know, and she does have Alzheimer's, but she does, the one thing that it seems to work consistently is she always remembers, even with her Alzheimer's, she always remembers to feed the dog.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
a thing that keeps her, and
Keeps her engaged
she's
and
99 years old, so.
Yep. Wonderful. That's
She's
awesome.
gonna make I think she may make 100.
I hope so.
So do I. But anyway, the point being is yes, pets can be a great companion
Yep.
for people
And
who
and
can
it's
take care of them.
and it's important to focus on, it's not the pet, it's the companion.
Yeah,
Right?
it's the idea
So-
that it's a
So
companion.
there may be other ways to replace that companionship
Oh yeah,
other
sure.
than a pet, but you need that connection. You need that interaction and engagement.
Whatever it is, it
with
doesn't
something
matter
else.
whether what it is. It's
Yep.
it's the connection between them.
Exactly.
I think that's why the robot companions work.
They do. Yep.
Because
Yep.
they can be programmed to respond
Yep.
back to the person and in a way that the person is familiar with.
And the studies are funny because people,
I think it,
I got another question to get to. Eddie, I'll get to yours in just a second. Yeah, interesting. The studies show that even people who are really skeptical, thinking, what do I want with a robot as a pet? This is crazy, and they end up getting extremely attached to them. And so
I'm sorry, I have to laugh.
there's this affinity that just
true.
is there. Eddie asked about questions about dogs and cats smelling if somebody has a problem. That's a little out of my health tech scope,
Yeah,
but I do know that they absolutely have cancer sniffing dogs. There are dogs. Again, dogs have, what is it? 1,000, 10,000
Dogs have
more
owners.
sensors.
Dogs have owners, cats have staff.
Yeah. And so they can be trained. And the same as training artificial intelligence. Just, this is somebody who has cancer. This is somebody who doesn't. This is somebody who does, somebody who doesn't. And then if you start picking out the ones you know have cancer, you give them a reward. And eventually, for some.
They associate particular, like for example, diabetic dogs are good at detecting when diabetics are about to crash.
Yep.
If they have forgotten to take their insulin or they don't have any way of easy way to monitor the thing. Dogs will say, can say, well, jump. I've watched a dog jump on its owner because and immediately upon him doing that, the person sat down, took his blood sugar, and it was like way up there.
Yep.
The dog knew it.
So the health tech angle to this is, if there's something that the dogs can detect, then we can make a device that can do that too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there is a signal there, and it's just a question of extracting the signal from the noise accurately. And they're making huge progress in this. There are a number of different programs and devices underway that are detecting biomarkers in your breath. So you just blow into this device and it can make diagnoses.
That's exactly, there's a company, I forget the name of it right off the top of my head. They took a CO2 sensor, and they're in the process of trying to adapt it to detect the odors of ketoacidosis.
Yeah, their companies already have that. Philips partnered with a company on that.
Yeah.
Oh God, 3 or 4 years ago, and yeah, so
they're just making. I
believe it's acetone, is what is the marker for the ketosis, or whatever the correct term is. But
ketoacidosis. Which is
so
the wrong side of
there are companies that already have that. So yeah,
you know enough to replace, know enough to take sugar up your sugaring. When they detect that, you want to up your sugar intake, and then you watch your sugar so that you don't go too far the other way.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's all kinds of fascinating progress that's being made, and I mean, one of the joys of what I get to do is I hear about stuff that's going on in university labs all over the world, and the stuff that's going on with sensors, with microfluidics. Take a tiny little drop of blood and instantly run 100 different diagnostic tests on it in just a couple minutes.
Yeah,
without any special equipment.
It doesn't take long anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they're just all kinds
Are there
of fascinating
actual
things
projects
going.
for that are working, and not just the Theranos scam?
Yes, there are projects that are working, not commercially, but they're still in the lab. But it's
But you're not talking about Theranos.
We are not talking about Theranos.
Okay,
that's a whole other story.
Oh, that was a.
But that's why you won't see many Kickstarter stories on Health Tech Insider. So
it has recommendations for the Twilight Zone. Man loving a robot.
Yeah, I remember the episode.
Well, how about this one? There's a movie out there called Bloodshot.
Okay.
And with the guy basically, some lab loaded a guy up with nanites, and I think nanites will be a real thing very soon. The idea of small programmable mechanisms that you could put in the body to repair parts, or induce, or maybe induce the immune system to help with repair.
Yep.
I don't think that's very far from becoming reality.
No.
Hey, Alfred, I know you were talking about Medical Alert. That's the one that advertises I fell and I can't get up. I use one of their competitors. It's like $10 a month cheaper. It's $31 a month. It's called Medical Guardian.
Yeah, I know Medical Guardian. Yep.
Cellular. I've been using it for several years. I'm very happy with it. Very good.
Good.
service.
Yeah. Yeah.
I put the phone number on the chat if anybody needs one.
Thank you.
Ron,
Yeah.
you see, you have the advantage of avoiding the issue of technophobia. You don't have that problem, so you're more likely to use it.
And
You remember
Ron,
I don't-
Ron, you
I don't
didn't,
want to do that.
you didn't send,
I want my wife to use it, and she has used it successfully.
Ron, you did
Yeah.
not send the phone number to everyone in the chat. I didn't get it.
It,
make
the
sure-
phone number's
check-
on the chat.
Did you send it to everyone or did you send it to one person?
Oh, did I?
You
Oh,
might
I-
make sure it says to everyone.
Looks like you sent it to me,
in the,
Ron.
to on the chat.
Okay, I'll type it again. I'll send it again. Yeah, I didn't notice this. Thank you.
And while there's, I'll take advantage of that pause there. Asa, don't end the meeting until you give everyone a chance to copy whatever they want out of the chat.
I know his video's off. I don't know whether he heard you.
I heard you, Brendan.
We should also say that this is being recorded, and ASA at some point is going to have this up on the website. So anybody who enjoyed this and have friends who might be interested in this presentation should be directed to the website so they can see it on Zoom sometime in the future.
Dave, I think it'll be on
See it now?
No, I think you know. It's
Brendan, you
bad
see
they
it
don't have.
on the chat now?
Yes, you sent it to everyone this time.
Medical Guardian, yep.
I don't have anything.
It's in the chat line. You don't see it there?
Click the
Oh,
chat button.
Hit the chat button.
There it is. Got it.
All the questions that were asked are in the chat line on the side of the screen. They're right on the side.
Thank you.
And you can scroll up and down at the chat to see all the
Medical
Go
Guardian.
all the way to the bottom. It's right there.
I see it. Yeah, thank you.
It's
And
just
where's
every-
Sully? Speaking of pets,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, where's Sully?
He's right here.
Oh, tell him to say hello.
Come on, come here. Here he is.
There he is.
Okay.
It's a cat. Sweetheart.
It's the baby.
Mhm. We have a collection at this house where I am right now. We have a collection of 8 dogs. Most two of them are 8 animals. I'm sorry. 2 of them are barn cats, and the other 6 are dogs.
Yeah.
So we have quite a collection.
With his horse therapy.
But
as
then
well.
again, we have a 175-acre horse farm for them to live on, so they're not confined to an apartment.
Are there any other questions for Alfred? Any other questions?
Less chance.
Alfred, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I hope you realize the sacrifice that I made. The Eagles are playing tonight.
Oh dear.
I just did a
By
job.
the way, Alfred,
Oh,
Alfred,
you're
Eagles are
a
playing.
Philly fan, huh?
Absolutely.
You're only halfway
All
through
right.
the first quarter. We're only halfway through the first quarter.
Good.
Yeah, but
Alfred,
it's supposed to be
you're
game.
in luck because if you can't watch, they're probably winning. If you were watching, it'd be different.
I'm afraid there's no, whether I watch or not is not going to make any difference.
I have absolutely no sympathy because I'm a diehard Mets and Rangers fan.
There you go.
Yeah, how about the fact that we had a 50, my hockey team had a 50, finally broke through a 54 year, 54,
Drought.
1928 to 1994,
Wow.
That's
before they
terrific.
finally won another, no, 39-40 to 50, 94-95.
Well, for your baseball fans, you got the Dodgers and the Giants starting in a few minutes on
There you
TBS.
go.
Yeah, and
Brooklyn Dodgers?
I used to go to Ebbets Field. I grew up in Ebbets Field.
Yep.
I grew up going to the polo grounds,
There you go.
the Mets and
Yeah,
the
I went there
Giants.
too. Yeah, I went
The
there.
Mets and the Giants.
Yeah.
Well, Alfred,
Yes, sir.
thanks. That was a great presentation.
My pleasure.
A lot of useful,
Always a
lot-
joy to
lot
be
of-
with you guys.
Lot of helpful information
Lots of
there.
fun.
Good.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Dave,
Thanks.
Yeah,
Dave Metzger.
yes, I'm here.
Thank you for remembering to send me a, a clue this time.
No, that wasn't me. That was Hank. He's the one who's sending out the email blast.
Oh, well then, thank you.
By the way, the email blast hasn't changed at all. It's just that you have to check your spam buckets. Some people get it and some don't.
Yeah, I finally got it, so I will get it, and it will get routed to my